Next, it's a magical half hour of television. Bewitched. Then at 9:05 Eastern, Little House on the Prairie. It's all coming up here on TBS. Next on TBS, let Samantha work her magic. You'll be bewitched. Then don't you deserve some happy days? It's all coming up on TBS. Next on TBS, join Fonzie and friends for Happy Days. Then they're America's favorite roomies, Three's Company. All coming up on TBS. Next on TBS, it's Scooby-Doo. Then he's a real hero for the 90s, cleaning up the globe. Captain Planet. It's all coming up here on TBS. Next on TBS, match wits with two legal masterminds. First, Andy Griffith cracks the case as Matlock. Then Raymond Burr tracks down the truth in his classic role, Perry Mason. All coming up on TBS. No one can solve a crime like Ben Matlock and Perry Mason. Coming up next, Matlock gets down and dirty to catch a criminal. Then at 12:05 Eastern, Perry Mason puts it all on the line for the innocent. It's coming up next on TBS, so stay tuned.
Next, the Atlanta Braves play some hardball against the New York Yankees. Catch all the action next on TBS.
Next, it's the last great adventure of the weekend. National Geographic Explorer, coming up next on TBS. Next on TBS, James Brolin and Margot Kidder's dream house turns into a nightmare. The Amityville Horror, coming up next on TBS. Next on TBS, some backpackers get back to nature until nature gets back at them. Day of the Animal, coming up next on TBS. Next, a simple investigation uncovers a deadly secret. Sally Field and Paul Newman, Absence of Malice, coming up next on TBS. Next, one family may not have a future when a force of horrifying creatures emerges from the past. Gargoyles, coming up next on TBS. Next on TBS, when somebody frames the Duke for murder, the Duke fights back. The War Wagon, coming up next on TBS.
Next, 1964 is a year of laughs and loves to remember for the inner city students at Cooley High. Coming up next on TBS.
Next on TBS, it's a deadly path from a chain gang escape to a buried fortune in gold. El Condor, coming up next on TBS. Next on TBS, it's mythic monsters and epic adventures. Jason and the Argonauts, coming up next on TBS. Next, star-crossed lovers have to deal with heartbreak and a handful of reptiles when dinosaurs ruled the earth. Next on TBS.
Tomorrow on TBS, Charles Bronson is a Russian spy who must stop a U.S. sabotage mission. Telephone, 1:05 Eastern tomorrow on TBS.
Next, scientist Sean Connery must risk everything to save his research. Medicine Man, coming up next right here on TBS.
Next, high school has never been so much fun. Sean Penn, Phoebe Cates, and Jennifer Jason Leigh. Fast Times at Ridgemont High, next on TBS. Next on TBS, Chuck Norris is taking on the Hong Kong mob in Forced Vengeance. Stay tuned if you want to get some kicks. Next on TBS. Next on TBS, Mel Gibson and Robert Downey Jr. are two sky-high helicopter pilots working for the CIA in Air America. Next on TBS. Next on TBS, John Ritter is a very reluctant courier for a super-secret spy operation. James Belushi also stars in Real Men. Next on TBS. Next on TBS, Nicolas Cage and Samuel Jackson star in a wickedly funny satire. It's a special encore presentation of Amos and Andrew. Next on TBS. Kidnapped boy makes a break for home. Meredith Baxter and Michael Kirby star in The Kissing Place. Next on TBS. Next, a sinister force frightens the residents of a secluded mountain estate. Parker Stevenson stars in This House Possessed. Next on TBS. Coming up next, the votes are in, and it's time to announce which episode is number one. The Andy Griffith Show Top 15 Countdown is next on TBS. Next, Whoopi Goldberg is a South African schoolteacher who's not afraid to speak her mind. Miriam Maccabee co-stars in Serafina. Next on TBS. It's time to get down and dirty with the hard-charging wrestling superheroes of WCW Saturday Night. Next on TBS. Oh, yeah! Next on TBS, we'll explore the controversy of Gilligan's Island. Who's better looking, Ginger or Marianne? Then another debate heats up. Who's the best Darren, Dick York or Dick Sargent? You make the call on Bewitched, coming up on TBS. Next on TBS, it's magic, you know. Never believe it's not so. It's magic. It's Bewitched. After that, Tony Danza wants to know the truth. He wants to know who's the boss. So stay tuned to TBS. We've got the answers. Next on TBS, it's 1/2 hour when you'll be asking yourself, who's the boss? After that, there's no question about who's in charge. The name's Andy Taylor, and he rules Mayberry with a gentle smile and a fine how do you do. So keep it tuned to TBS. Coming up next, a young boy stands accused of an unthinkable crime. Stephanie Powers stars in A Death in Canaan, next on TBS. Next up, Scott Hamilton and Katarina Witt are some of the featured figure skaters in a TBS sports presentation. Discover Card Stars on Ice, next on TBS. Next on TBS, a fugitive couple races across Texas to save their young son. Goldie Hawn stars in The Sugarland Express, next on TBS. Next on TBS, a hard-boiled private eye and a policewoman team up to track down an elusive car thief. Joe Don Baker stars in Speed Trap, next on TBS. The shifty-eyed poker-playing gunslinger is back at it again. Kenny Rogers in The Gambler Returns, The Luck of the Draw, next on TBS. Next up, he's not just a grumpy old man, he's also a crime-busting super sleuth attorney at law. Matlock is next on TBS. Gangsters, murder, high-speed car chases. It's all in a day's work for the smoothest private eye. James Garner is Marlowe, next on TBS. Next, it's war, and the battlefield is set. The meanest wrestlers are going head-to-head, and nothing will stop them. WCW Saturday Night is next on TBS.
At first, it's a cute, furry little creature. But then something goes wrong, and the little pet turns into an army of angry monsters. Gremlins is next on TBS.
A twisted family locks a group of young kids in their basement. Brandon Adams stars in The People Under the Stairs, next on TBS. A reformed outlaw defends homesteaders with the only law he knows, the gun. Alan Ladd stars in Shane, next on TBS.